Going. The March 7th, 2023 meeting of the Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals, which is known as the BZA. I'm Lindsay Arthurs, chair of the board. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. In addition to myself, we have Vice Chair Judy Freshman and board members Inta Malice, Portia Clark, and Richard Kaplan. Also present are the professional staff, including Blake Bowen, Board of Zoning Appeals Coordinator Megan Ryan, BZA Associate Planner Stephen Rissy, the Zoning Prim Supervisor, and Brett Goldberg, Associate Planner. We ask that you give us some grace as we juggle between in-person and virtual format, although that shouldn't be too difficult tonight. Before we call our first case, I will share with you some general information about the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then some ground rules for how we conduct our hybrid hearings. The board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests with the county board. The board does have the authority to do 3 things. We can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements on structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. We can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance, and we can decide appeals of decisions of the zoning administrator. Now here are some specific instructions about this evening's hybrid meeting. First of all, please silence your cell phones. I'm going to do the same thing. Applicants and speakers. If you're attending in person, when your case is called, please move to the podium in front of the room and identify yourself. Please be sure to speak into the microphone for the benefit of those on Teams. And please note that the podium is adjustable. Tonight's meeting is also available to stream from the county website via Microsoft Teams. If you're attending virtually and lose internet connectivity, please reconnect with us by phone. If you're attending or viewing via the Teams link, please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Turn off the sound on any other devices around you to minimize interference, and please turn off your cameras until you are called upon to speak. Once you are called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located in the meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. The meeting chat is active for presenters and board members who need technical assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Applicants and speakers, once you are called upon, you will be called upon once it is time for you to speak. We requested that all speakers pre-register to speak tonight. If you have not pre-registered but wish to speak, speaker slips are in the box next to the clerk to the left of the board. Please hand your speaker slip to Blake Bowen on the right side of the dais. We will do our best to accommodate any additional speakers if time permits. Public comment will take place only during the allotted time frames. During public comment, a speaker timer will be displayed on the screen on the podium. Please be respectful of the time allotted. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance of the session or to leave at your convenience. Now for tonight's meeting procedures. The staff reports for each case for tonight's agenda can be found on the BZA website. A link to the agenda can be found in the chat session, as well as on a QR code on the front table to link to the electronic reports to view on your own device. If you have not seen the report for your case, you may wish to review it before your item is called. The order of our meeting is as follows. First, cases will be called and the board members will ask any questions that they have of the county staff. Next, applicants or their representatives will be given an opportunity to make comments to support their application. Then, if there are speakers for an item, they will be called upon at that time. After we hear from speakers for or against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify some points. The board may also ask questions of any speakers, but we do not permit and will not condone any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. We have deemed the following time limits for applicants and speakers to be sufficient: 5 minutes for applicants for use permits and variances, and 3 minutes for speakers representing organizations, and 2 minutes for those speaking as individuals. After the board has gathered all the information we need and has discussed the case, we will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. That concludes the introductory remarks. Mr. Bowen or Ms. Ryan, would you please call the first item?
Yes, Ms. Arthurs. Before we get started, I wanted to check, are there any cases that the BZA is considering for an expedited group approval up front? And if so, which are the case numbers for those cases?
Yes. Did you not get my email?
I did.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you want me to say them?
Yes, please.
All right. Well, now I need to pull up my email. Sorry. Which ones?
11, 12.
All right. 11, 8, 12, and you can say
11, 8, 19.
Okay. So I believe those case numbers are V-11812-22-UP-1, a carryover item, as well as V-11819-22-UP-1. I'll now read the case language for each of those two cases. First number is V-11812-22-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Skylar Aarons on behalf of HGPT LLC, the owner, to permit a street setback of 14.6 feet to the porch, 13.6 feet to the porch eave, and 19.6 feet to the main building eave instead of 21 feet to the porch and main building eave, 19.5 feet to the porch eave as required from North Cleveland Street, and to permit a left side setback of 7 feet to the rear addition instead of 8 feet as required from the left side property line regarding a new rear addition with garage/basement below, second story addition, and front porch on an existing one-family dwelling in the R5 zoning district on the premises known as 423 North Cleveland Street within the Lion Park Civic Association. The second case on this group motion of approval is case number V-11819-22-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Adam Harrison and Sarah Simon, the owners, to permit a street setback of 19.2 feet to the front porch, 18.4 feet to the porch eave, instead of 21 feet to the front porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eave, as required from North Kenilworth Street, and to permit a right side setback of 4.4 feet to the side porch and steps, 4 feet to the porch eave, instead of 8 feet to the side porch, 5 feet to the porch eave and steps as required, and to permit an aggregate side setback of 16 feet instead of 18 feet as required regarding a new front and side porch to an existing one-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 1708 North Kenilworth Street within the Terra Leeway Heights Civic Association. The staff recommendation for both of these cases is for approval subject to the conditions listed.
Do any board members have any questions about those applications? Are there any speakers? Fabulous. I will call the roll.
Madam Chair,
Actually, we need a motion. Thank
I
you.
would like to make a motion in the matters of 11812-22-UP-1 and 11819-22-UP-1. I move approval subject to the conditions listed on their respective applications.
I'll second it.
Motion is made by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion to grant the applications passes 5-0.
Thank you to the board and staff.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right. Is there, Mr. Bowen, can you call the next case, please?
Yes, the next case on the agenda is technically case-V-11812-22-UP-1 that the board just approved in a group motion. So I will go to the next case. The follow-up case on the agenda is case number V-11817-22-UP-1. This is a use permit request by HB Home Services on behalf of Michael and Paris Sorrell, the owners, to permit a rear setback of 13.1 feet to the deck instead of 21 feet as required regarding a new rear deck to an existing one-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2727 First Street South within the Penrose Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Do any board members have any questions for the staff?
Was there any supplemental material for this?
No, we have no supplemental materials for any of the cases this month, which
Okay.
is a rarity.
No questions? Is the applicant is with us. Would you like to speak?
Yes, just wanted to say thank you for considering the application. I'm Mike Sorrell. I'm one of the homeowners. I did want to flag, we had, I believe when the application was submitted, we're waiting on 2 of the letters in support from our adjoining neighbors and got those fairly close to the date here. So just want to make sure that those are in the record as well. So we have letters in support from all the adjoining neighbors. And if it's helpful, can provide some background on the application and why we're looking to build a deck, or take any questions you all have.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a question. You have a letter of support from Rafael Sampaio
Yes, ma'am.
saying that he's your next door neighbor and he thinks it's wonderful and there's no address. So I'm hoping that he's 2733.
Yes, ma'am. He's on the property directly to our left, facing our property.
Okay, because that to me was the one outstanding neighbor. And I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V-11817-22-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the application passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your deck. Mr. Bowen, will you call the next case, please?
Yes, Smith Arthurs. The next case is case number V-11818-22-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Codley Stadler on behalf of Trevor and Tina Kelly, the owners, to permit a street setback of 19.2 feet to the front porch, 18.5 feet to the porch eve, instead of 21 feet to the front porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eve, as required from 24th Street North, regarding a new front porch on an existing one-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5013 24th Street South within the Claremont Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Do any board members have any questions for the staff? No? Is the applicant here?
Hi, this is Cody Stadler, the architect and agent for Trevor and Tina Kelly.
Hi.
Thanks for taking the time and for consideration of this project.
Madam Chair. Mr. Stadler, in going through the neighborhood input, I didn't see something from 2 neighbors across the street, 5008 and 5016. Perhaps I missed it, but if you could comment on that, because they are directly across and impacted by the project.
I do not know them directly, but I see that Trevor, the homeowner, is also on the call. So if Trevor could provide me input, that would be great.
Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I had the same concern. Partly, it was also a little difficult to read all the addresses, so because our copy was very faint.
Trevor, yeah, we hear you faintly.
We actually can't hear him.
Yeah. Trevor, are you there?
Yes. Okay.
Hey.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I stopped by those neighbors and tried to get them to sign, but the one was away for military duty, and the other one, they tend not to answer their door. So, but the notices did get put up last week on the neighborhood, on the street. So they have awareness of it, I'm sure.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I mean, generally, we like the applicant to make contact with their neighbors so that they can actually see the plans. Because the postings on the poles don't actually show what the plans are. And so we feel it's good for the neighbors to actually see the plans. Did you leave plans with the neighbors?
I did not, but I certainly can do that. I mean, I can do that tonight even.
Miss Malice and Miss Arthurs, I would note that the placards do now feature a QR code that links to the staff reports and the project drawings as well. So they can do that right from the placards these days.
That is very cool.
Could we confirm which the addresses were? Because I thought one was 5018, but I thought I see them on the list. But I don't see what the other one was.
The two that I noted are missing are 5008 and 5016.
Those
Which-
were the,
Yeah, that sounds correct. The 5008 and 5016.
Okay, what's, I guess, the one Amanda Wiley? Is she not 5008?
Now the Wileys are around the corner. They did sign. They're actually on 25th. I walked up and down all the streets here.
yeah, you got a lot of signatures.
Yeah.
The question was the most impacted neighbors.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
question for staff. Is it true that these two neighbors that we're talking about would have received a mailing with this as well? I think it was 5016 and 5008. 24th Street, directly across the street.
I will check the specific addresses that received the mailing and I'll get back to you momentarily. But generally speaking, yes.
Thank you.
Because they're right across the street. So
Right.
It's not like
Right.
they're behind or something.
Right. So like, I don't know, my thought on this one is that they're asking for a very minimal, less than 2 feet encroachment. And that the neighbors probably had placards and most likely a mailing, which we'll find out shortly. So, personally, I'd be in favor of this for what that's worth to my colleagues. I'll wait to hear from staff to confirm that the mailings would have gone out to those two.
I think we'll, no pressure, Blake. We'll give it a second.
Clock's not ticking. No worries.
Almost there.
Need the elevator music.
Yes, mail notices were sent to both of those.
Okay. So they've both been received. She beat you.
Thank you, Meg. A little speedier than me.
All right.
Good day.
Colleagues, does that change anybody's or sway anybody one way or the other?
I think that, as is pointed out, that it's a fairly minor issue, although that isn't necessarily something to overlook. But as long as we're confident that they did receive notification, that's helpful.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
in the matter of V-11818-22-UP-1, I move that the board approve this matter subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the application passes 5-0. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Bowen, will you call the next case, please?
Yes, Ms. Arthurs. The very next case on the agenda is case number V-11819-22-UP-1, which was approved in a group motion at the start of the hearing. So I will move on to the following case. The following case is case number V-11820-22-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Mark Kearney on behalf of Justin and Libby Boyd, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 7.6 feet to the porch and wall instead of 10 feet as required, to permit a left side setback of 4 feet to the window well and 3.6 feet to the areaway instead of 5 feet as required, to permit a right side setback of 6.6 feet to the wall instead of 10 feet as required, and to permit an aggregate side setback of 14.2 feet instead of 18 feet as required regarding a window well, areaway, front porch, and a second floor addition and a new 2-story rear and side addition over basement to an existing one-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 6212 22nd Street North within the Highland Park Overley Knolls Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Do my colleagues have any questions for staff? All right, is the applicant here?
Yes,
You can go ahead and speak.
this is Mark Cerny. I'm the architect and agent for Justin and Libby Boyd. I'll thank the staff for all their help in coordinating, Stephanie, especially Blake and Meg. Thanks for their help. And then also want to note that we did also submit a final letter of neighbor support that last day. So it might have been after the deadline for 2106 North Potomac Street. And I'm happy to answer any other questions the board has as well.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, the Airbnb, that's the property at 2106?
Yes.
And you do have input from them, correct?
Correct. We have it through the Airbnb interface.
Okay, is that the that's this document that we have here? I don't know if you can see that. The
It looks like a
inquiry-
screenshot.
Inquiry at comfortable 5-bed for 5-bath. That's the Airbnb response
Yes, host should be Rebecca.
from Rebecca. Okay.
What about 6216 22nd Street? I wasn't clear about that input, which is right next door.
So that one, we have a letter of support from the tenants who are there. The homeowners are abroad. It's a military family, and they just said it was in their best interest not to respond. But according to the neighborhood, they have really been out of the neighborhood for several years, and the tenants were fully supportive of the proposed plans, and the owners shared the plans with them as well.
Thank you.
$62.16. Just the question for my colleagues, how did you know that was a tenant? Because
I didn't. I had a note on my map that said that there was a request for more time. So somewhere in here, I saw that.
okay.
I just was unclear as to whether there was actually a sign off on it. And ordinarily tenants don't have a vote. But maybe that's all right in this case.
So 6216 in the notes in the very back say that it's Justin and Emily Hinson. Acknowledged receipt, no return of letter. Is that the tenant?
That's the owner.
That's the owner. So you sent a letter to the owner? Is that what that means?
Yes, and they sent an email back as well, acknowledging that they received it, but that they couldn't sign a letter of support.
Because
Their real estate professionals recommended against it.
Oh,
so they objected.
No, their real estate professionals just said, don't sign a letter of support.
A real estate professional.
Did the information that you had sent them include the detailed plans?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, I don't know that you could consider that an objection if they didn't even voice their
Lack of
opinions.
Yeah,
lack of support is not an objection.
I agree. I mean, they had an opportunity to object.
Right.
If they wished to object. That was what we were trying to get to here.
Correct. Yes, that is perfectly accurate.
Okay. I'm fine.
Motion?
Yes, please.
I move Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11820-22-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the application passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Mr. Bowen, will you call the next case, please?
Yes, Ms. Arthurs, the next case is case number V-11821-23-VA-1. This is a variance request by Trip DeFalco on behalf of Adam and Bryn McNeil, the owners, to permit the construction of a fence measuring 9 feet tall along the rear lot line instead of 7 feet tall as required, regarding a new rear fence for a one-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5601 24th Street North within the Leeway Overlea Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the variance request. An alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA see fit to approve the variance request as advertised.
Do my colleagues have any questions for the staff?
I have a sort of question comment. Unlike the tax map that we just saw, this is a ginormously tall house. When I looked at it, it's not unusual if an infill towers over its neighbors. But what I noticed was that whoever made the decision chose not to excavate for the lower level in the garage. And so the first level looks to be pretty much at ground level. And so I would be disinclined to approve a 9-foot fence under any circumstances, but I feel as if it's a self-inflicted wound to that might have been avoided, with a different design. In any case, I just made that observation because it was I was struck by the fact that even in a lot of infills, you don't necessarily see that, and that may explain part of the reason why they feel the need to have an unusually tall fence.
Right.
Can we bring up a picture of the front if we have that? Yeah.
Can I explain that?
No, not right now.
You'll get a turn. I have, did you want to follow up, or I have a question for staff? So it appears that the issue is the location and height of the trash receptacle in the adjoining property. Is that trash receptacle located and screened according to county ordinance?
We did run this question by our colleagues on the zoning plan review team. Because the dumpsters are considered a movable object, a trash truck will come and pick them up. They're not subject to particular setback requirements and the similar no screening requirements.
Because I've noticed that in other properties, they in fact do screen the dumpster. So I just wondered if they were in any way at fault in this situation.
Yeah, and this building may differ from other, taller multifamily buildings in the county that are approved by special acceptance site plan that might have a site plan condition necessitating as much. I believe this was developed by right in the 60s.
Okay, so there's no requirement.
Mm-hmm.
They're in compliance. Okay.
Yes, as far as we know.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, would the applicant like to speak?
Yeah, I'm not the applicant, but I am Trip DeFalco, the architect that filed the application on behalf of my clients. I would like to point out that since the existing or the house that's under construction was brought up, that house is designed completely within compliance of the county zoning ordinance. There have been no, exceptions or variances granted for construction of that house. And a comment was made about why the house was not excavated for the garage, but in fact it was. The back of the house is only a foot or two, in fact it's about 18 inches above the existing grade height, and the patio back there is actually excavated into the existing grade about another foot and a half. So we did everything we could to get the foundation of that house as low as possible, working with the existing grade, having to comply with building code, of course, which, requires us to maintain at least 8 inches of bare concrete before we get to any wood framing. So I feel like we did what we could to get the house as low as we could. And the garage is, in a sense, set into the hillside. So I just wanted to correct the record on that, saying that we did not excavate for the garage or for the house. We did as far as we could. And I think that the situation that we're faced with here is one that is probably never contemplated by the ordinance, and that is that we have a raised dumpster platform, which is not only raised by virtue of the platform it sits on, but also the grading of the parking lot behind my client's property, which is, entirely visible from basically anywhere you stand in their backyard. So even though we've tried to lower their patio to take advantage of grade again, it's still there and it's right behind them. And frankly, we're just, looking for a little way to have some visual relief against that dumpster.
Madam Chair. Okay.
Yes, go ahead. I'll ask after you.
So, our decisions are based on the standards that are set before us. And have you read the staff report?
I have.
You have. And so you understand, do you feel that staff has made an error in their analysis of why this should be denied?
No, I don't. I think they did exactly what they're supposed to do based on the ordinance. But the fact is, you guys exist for situations that don't quite fit in the ordinance or that were not contemplated by the, very exacting language of the ordinance. So we're looking to you as a board to provide relief for what we believe is a situation that wasn't envisioned.
No, that's not our job to think about situations that weren't thought about. Our job is to look at the standards, and the question is there something unique about your property that's different than other properties in Arlington that would warrant a variance, and that rise to the standard that there's actually an economic hardship here if this variance was not granted. And I believe that there are many sites with this condition where neighboring properties can see the service areas of adjoining apartment buildings.
Especially with the commercial and residential as mixed as it is in Arlington.
Right.
Yeah.
So, our standard is there something unique here that to this site, to this property, that would cause us to agree that there is some kind of an economic hardship here. And I guess I don't see it yet. I'm looking to you to make your case.
Well, I don't see what the economic hardship is to granting somebody, a 19-foot setback to their front porch. I mean, I don't think the economic hardship is the only thing that you guys consider.
No, this is a variance, not a use permit. What you've heard so far are use permits, and that has to do with placement. Variances have to do with other aspects of the zoning ordinance. So the standard for a use permit is it compatible? Standard for a variance is there an economic hardship? And so those are spelled out in the staff report. And so staff has gone down point by point to say why they concluded that there was no hardship.
Well, I could say that it's a unique situation because while other properties do abut different zoning classifications, including multifamily, as in this one, having the topography and the raised dumpster pad right behind them and as close to their property as it is, I would submit to you is unique and is a hardship. I mean,
What-
at least from a, an enjoyment standpoint or, quality of life standpoint.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I don't look at a sightly backyard, or the adjoining neighbors behind me are not, it's not a lovely view out of my backyard, which is completely full of windows, and I look at cars staring at me. But there are alternatives. We have planted Leland cypresses, which grow very tall very quickly. I'm still waiting because we didn't plant them that long ago, so I'm still looking at these things. But there are other alternatives besides putting up a very, very tall fence along the backyard. Have the applicants looked into any of the alternatives?
The applicants have asked me to apply for the variance as it was presented.
Okay,
So from my view, it doesn't meet the variance standard.
I have to think I'm heading that way as well. Motion, go for it.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution denying variance V-118121-23-VA-1.
Second.
Motion has been made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion to deny the application passes 5-1. 4-1. So used to saying 5. That concludes this matter. Mr. Bowen, will you please call the next case?
Yes, Ms. Arthurs, the next case on the agenda is case number V-11822-23-VA-1. Correct. Yes. A variance request by Monica and Michael Schiller, the owners, to permit an addition, a window well, to an existing non-conforming townhouse regarding the addition of a window well in the RA 1426 zoning district on the premises known as 4528 34th Street South, Fairlington. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the variance request with conditions.
Here we go again. Anybody have any questions for the staff?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Sorry.
So, Mr. Bowen, this is a placement issue that in every other district that we have responsibility for is handled with a use permit. And this district does not have a use permit option with me so far.
Yeah, I would say the issue here is they cannot modify in a non-conforming building with the window well, and the building is non-conforming due to the existing separation between it and the neighboring residential building.
But the relief is for placement?
Not necessarily placement, just to modify the window well itself. The window well does not have setback issues from a street or property line.
So it's
What makes this non-conforming different from any other, R6 non-conforming, right? If I have an R6, I can put in a window well with a use permit. What's the difference?
RA 1426 district does not allow use permits for placement modifications.
Is staff aware of any rationale behind that distinction?
No, not offhand.
So the question from, thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that was perfect. The question is, this is an Arlington County zoning ordinance. Now we have 2 cases like this tonight. What does staff feel that it would be in the county's best interest to modify, to do a text amendment on the zoning ordinance language to allow a use permit option?
I don't know that staff's opinion on that matters. We don't get to set the policy at all. So really, I don't really think that our opinion is germane.
Policy, but you get to advocate for policy changes, no?
Not in particular, no. Mostly our colleagues on the comprehensive planning team draft policy.
So you don't go and complain that, BZA is just really struggling with this issue because the zoning language is corrupted.
No, we don't.
Okay, well, that's good to know that that you don't advocate for changes to the zoning ordinance. So the question is, who should advocate for the changes to the zoning ordinance? And how do we communicate with people that could hear us?
Richard and I have actually been talking about that, and we plan to discuss that next week
Okay.
at our working session. We have some little ideas that we like to run by everybody because we agree there's something that.
Yeah, I mean, there are just recurring issues, and I honestly wasn't clear whether staff actually bumps these up to planning staff, because I know you guys don't make the changes, planning staff does, but that you encourage them to, put something in their work plan, but that's outside of your purview.
Yeah, generally, yeah.
Is it outside of the zoning administrator's purview?
I can't necessarily speak, to her day-to-day work and whether or not she occasionally gets approached. But generally speaking, her role is to administer, interpret, and enforce the ordinance, not to advocate for policy changes.
All right, we just need to clarify that so that we don't stumble over the same things.
Yeah, and I think the work session next week is a very good avenue to have that discussion.
Yes.
All right, so in the meantime, we have to deal with reality.
The two tonight.
All right, done asking questions.
We had a recent case in Fairlington that seemed particularly unreasonable and to me, completely. This at least has something that extends into the property as opposed to a completely internal.
Right.
So I think and we have in the past when we have flagged repeated cases, to do something to look at that part of the ordinance and whether or not there's something. I mean, Fairlington is ginormous, and there's my guess is pretty much every stick of the property is non-conforming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe we can look at in our work session, encouraging, a grandfather or some kind of something or other, that says in a case like this, there may be some other way to do it besides having all of the landowners, many of whom probably haven't been called in to the BZA until recently, because there's an awful lot of activity that goes on down there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it just internal. So I think we definitely need to get somebody's attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think staff explained it at our last hearing that they have data now that they didn't have before. And before they had that data, they didn't know that there was a non-conformance issue. And so a lot of things may have happened without BZA involvement.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the county has data, they're obligated to take that into consideration and realize now that this has opened up a possible floodgate of cases that.
And it's an equity issue too for the people who unfortunately are coming
now
from last month onward.
Yeah.
And all the others who've been able to do the exact same things and not had any issues at all.
So I know we're going to get to the applicants pretty soon, but
thank you for your patience, guys.
But
you have to do
it
something.
seems that it would be and I think we said this last month, that the Fairlington Civic or the homeowners associations really need to go to the county board to get clarification and relief on this. Individual applicants, depending on how we rule, may be satisfied with the ruling and then don't take it forward. But there needs to be someone that, is going to carry this forward, because, it's got to be costing the homeowners association time and effort too, to have
And
to
money.
deal with
I mean,
money.
and money.
Right.
And the applicant's money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The having to file these things
And wait.
Because surveys are probably needed, right, to verify the location.
They may be using
I think they're using the
county
plat.
data.
No, but if they're putting in a window well, then that encroaches on the outside.
Yeah. Okay. So
I mean, their plans are being drawn up, but I don't think anyone's doing like an Alta.
No, but
plat.
like for my porch project, I have to submit a survey showing the porch is where I said it was going to be.
Right.
Right. And that's $500.
thank you.
Anybody else? Or would the applicants like to speak?
Good evening. I'm Monica Schiller, my husband, Mike Schiller. We are the owners. Just want to say thank you to all of the individuals who have helped us along the way to get this application submitted, because this was a very foreign process for us. And I think we're very happy to hear the conversation that you're having, because we have been hearing the same thing kind of on the ground. So we hope that you and our associations engage and figure out the best path forward for others. But we are happy to answer any questions you might have about our specific case.
Does anybody have any questions?
So just our difficulty is that the standard that is being applied for a variance is a very high standard. If you were here, you saw that, we denied a case based on that standard. And so that's the only tool we've been given. So, in terms of a strict application to that standard, your project wouldn't conform, but we're trying to figure out a way, since it's really a placement issue or a non-conforming issue, how to get around it. And we did last month, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this is a problem for us because, for us not to appear arbitrary, of granting what, of how we grant things, we do adhere to a standard. So we have to figure out a way to work through that standard to rationalize approving this project. And anybody want to take a shot at it? Let's hear from staff. How did you rationalize it?
Number two. Read number two.
Yeah, I think the staff report is pretty detailed, I hope. Is there any question about a specific section of it? These buildings were built in 1940 prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance, so there was never really any chance for them to be conforming. And, the second the zoning ordinance was adopted on July 15th, 1950, they were locked into this state where it'd be very difficult to make any modifications to them without going through the BZA.
Both inside and out.
Yes. Anything structural. Really. And yeah, the case that the BZA saw last month, I believe, was purely interior modifications that were structural.
Yeah.
I mean, taken as a whole, right? I think that one could argue that not being able to do any structural modifications inside or out does unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, especially when you consider that this townhouse was built in 1940s and uses of townhouses have changed vastly over the last 82 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is that math right?
83, I believe. Yeah.
Close, that's close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other problem I typically have in some of these cases is the condition number 3, the condition or situation of the property is not so general or recurring as to make it reasonably practical to formulate a regulation which can be adopted as an amendment to the ordinance. And my understanding that these, and again, I am terrible with numbers, the RA 14-26 are exceedingly rare in Arlington. And maybe exceedingly rare is probably not the right term, but they're not common.
They're not necessarily the most common zoning district. A lot of Arlington County land, about 75% of it, that it's zoned for residential use is zoned for single family use only. And a lot of multifamily buildings are developed by special exception site plan through the county board, and it can seek, exceptions to different zoning ordinance requirements through that process. These are not built by site plan, so they're not subject to site plan amendments. So the BZA would be the appropriate avenue to seek relief.
Because there weren't such things as site plans, because they didn't even have the zoning ordinance when these were built. Right?
Yeah, site plans started being adopted more readily in the 60s and 70s. Right, these were built in 1940.
But I think given the size of this development, that's general and recurring in a great big piece of Arlington.
Yeah, it is.
It may not happen throughout the county. It may not be in North Arlington or some of the other zip codes, but I think the part of our concern about there's 2 tonight, there was 1 last time, who knows what's coming. I think that's now that all the cat's out of the bag, there's going to be a lot more. And so if this was an isolated spot, parcel, maybe, but I think this is a huge acreage with a lot of units.
And this is not, 1426 is not completely rare.
No.
You know, it's a by right zoning district. Yeah, that's the dilemma, is whether to grant relief for what appears to us to be placement issue. So it's, you know, the justification to me that this is unusual, you know, unusual, it can't be remedied. I don't know that we can hang our hat there. I do have some sympathy for Mr. Kaplan's argument that not being able to make any modifications to your property is a hardship. You know, I'm more likely to hang my hat on.
I know that we've talked about this in the past about remedies, potential remedies, meaning the county board changes the code. I guess that because this is new and really just came up, have these applicants had enough time for that to have even been brought to the board for that to be a viable option?
Yeah, I mean,
normally we've had this discussion a lot with townhomes and coverage. You know, that would make sense because that's been going on for a long time, and it could have gone to the board by now, and they could have had that discussion. But since this really only came up last month and it's still new, would that really be a viable alternative?
I think the condominium board or the homeowners, whatever they call themselves, who represent all of the properties are the appropriate vehicle for that.
And isn't Miss Arthur's comments evidence that it might not be so general and reoccurring? Because since the enactment of the zoning ordinance, this is the first time
it's the first time only because of the data, not because of the existence. It's not. It's
right. It's always been there.
It's always
been there. Right. And
who sent that plaque?
And
but
so,
should we hold the homeowners responsible for that?
Right.
But general and recurring refers to the prevalence of the condition, not how many times we've seen it.
And in Fairlington alone, there are,
there's hundreds of units in Fairlington that this would apply.
That's certainly general recurring.
So it is prevalent, and I think there's other. I don't know about Barcroft, maybe 1426,
But how many units in all of Arlington? And we're comparing hundreds.
Hundreds of units qualify as plenty in order to make a zoning change. I mean, hundreds. It's not a percent.
But the difference between a zoning change and is it practical that the board's going to care about such a zoning change, right? There's 100,000 dwelling units in Arlington. The Arlington County Board is not going to. Yes, they can make any. You can make a zoning change for a single house. That doesn't mean it's likely to happen.
A text, this is a huge property. And I think there's other huge properties this apply to. And I believe that when and if the Civic Association and Fairlington Homeowners Association come to the county board, they will get the county board's attention. I believe they will get relief. The question is,
as opposed to the R27 issue where no one's been able to get relief.
If the question becomes motivation, in the past, we've had cases where there was no motivation for anyone to go to the board and ask for the change because they thought we would grant. And it was when they learned that we would not grant that they were motivated to go to the board, and the board, in fact, solved the problem. I mean, we've had cases where the board, in fact, solved the problem. I'm not inclined to do that here yet, but I think that is the ultimate solution.
I think that's where I differ because I totally understand your rationale and I'm not diminishing it in any way, but I just don't want the first couple applicants to have to pay.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's what I'm trying to, but it's like how, applicants, do you promise to advocate, to make this change so that we're not, because we may You know, if this is coming to us twice every month,
Yeah.
you know, it is completely inappropriate for us to grant these. Because it, you know, however you want to define prevalence.
Mr. Rissy had his hand up.
Okay,
Would
he's gonna
you-
help us?
He took it down, but I think I would like to hear from him.
Good evening, board. I took it down because I think Mr. Kaplan actually made the point that I was going to make. And I think this is a topic for discussion for the work session, which I think we've already relied on this meeting. But the standard is not whether the property is general or reoccurring. That's not the standard. The standard is whether it is so reasonable or so general or reoccurring as to make it reasonably practicable to make the amendment. And the issue is there's a limited amount of amendments the county board can make in a year because there's a limited amount of staff to study and make changes. And it's just, is it so general and reoccurring that it has risen to the level to be put on the work plan for the county board to make the change? Is it that general or reoccurring? It is not just general or reoccurring. Is it general or reoccurring enough to make the change practicable? And
So that's a matter of opinion, right?
Yeah, I mean,
that's what you're here to do.
Subject to our interpretation, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's
Well,
exactly
why we're
right.
here.
But I mean, it's not just our opinion. It's you know, it's the board's opinion. It's, you know, CPHC's opinion.
Well,
It's a
and
lot of
Staff
opinions.
has given theirs in the
It's our
report.
opinion. We're the deciding board.
You know, if we're not the deciding board on whether a zoning amendment gets made. You know, that's, you know, we don't decide.
No, right, but we're
whether-
we're the one who decides whether in this specific situation, whether this condition or situation of the property is not so general or reoccurring as to make it reasonably practical to formulate a regulation which can be adopted as an amendment or ordinance, because that is the question that is literally before us.
And I would say it is most certainly reasonable to make a modification to RA 1426. And I don't know if I would go on how much staff time there is. The question is, you know, when you're talking about what's practical, you know, when you start talking about 3 properties, you know, and trying to define 3 properties separate from, you know, 5,000 others, you know, you get into a practical issue. When you have hundreds of units, you know, you don't have that practical issue. You say 1426 and everything that covers it. I don't, you know, if we can agree to approve this on something other than that condition, I would be interested in that. But I guess do we have to say yes to all of these conditions?
Yeah, I mean, so like for the variance, it's one of the things we have to find.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so like in my mind, I'm comparing our
Ms. Arthurs makes the case that, you know, right now it's not practical because it's just happened. But, right, and she's saying it's just happened. Nobody's had time to run to the board and even, you know, get that conversation going. So
at this moment, it's not a practical.
and the question becomes, okay,
Right.
at what moment do
Right.
we say,
Yeah.
hey, Arlington,
Right.
you've had 3 months to get this going and you haven't done anything, you know, now we're putting the ball in your court.
Yeah, now the applicants need to go to their association and get their association to do something, which hopefully they're doing
And-
So
already.
I could get my head around
We
that. Maybe.
also don't have the facts and figures in front of us, right? So like we're all insinuating, yes, this zoning district is prevalent within the county, but I don't know that. I'm just taking everyone's word on that.
No, but I think we all know,
No,
I mean,
just in Fairlington.
Fairlington's big enough and we all are residents of the county and we all know people that live in Fairlington.
Right.
And we all know people that are trying to renovate in Fairlington. I mean, it's,
But I go back to my original point is, yeah, a couple hundred or however many, you know, there are in Fairlington, but like R26, right? That's more than a couple hundred.
Oh, yeah, R2, but yes.
Right. And so that's my point is that, you know,
To me, practical is if you have a whole district, you know, if it's a whole district, it's a line item in the ordinance that says, okay, this district
Right.
now has a change.
I don't disagree with that, but the county board is, you know, if there's a similar problem with R26 where R26 homeowners can't do any interior or exterior modifications to their dwellings,
I have
that
to-
will get in front of the board tomorrow.
What?
I think if there was a similar like R26, R25, R24, all of that, right?
If there were.
That would if there was such a big problem in one of the more prevalent
R27?
R2.
See, it's not, yeah.
But the R27 isn't you can't modify period.
Right.
This is you can't modify period.
Right.
Full stop. Right. And so if there was an equivalent, so my point for this for number 3 is that if there was an equivalent restriction on a much more prevalent zoning district in Arlington County, I think that problem would be solved more easily, and that goes to that prevalence.
If the association, I'm just, from my perspective, Fairlington is a big enough body that the county board will hear them.
Yeah.
If they go.
I agree.
There's no question in my mind. I mean, they had one person from I forgot what zoning district it was, where they made waves and it got changed. But Fairlington, has the capability of making themselves heard. There's no question about that.
There are 2 cases tonight. We can't speculate about what's going to happen. I think the Fairlington board needs to take the lead, and I agree with you that they'll get attention far more than a lot of other than if you try to mess with a regular R6 and then you'd get 400 people. But so in the meantime, I think that I feel like when you look at the staff analysis in terms of the hardship, the ors and the ands, I think you can justify the case.
I'm gonna
Question.
pause. Would the applicant like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss when you say Fairlington as a single entity, and I don't know if any of you have lived here, but in
Fair.
South
All of us
Fairlington,
have, everybody's lived
all
in
of them.
Fairlington.
okay. Well, anyway, in South Fairlington, there are
Right.
6 different condominium associations, right? So from a business perspective, there's not a single entity that is going to be able to go to the county board. There's the Fairlington Civic Association, which is a volunteer collection of the groups, but the individual business entities are smaller. Ours is 350 units. Adjacent ones are and that's homeowner units, not building units. So
Right.
just
But
wanted to point out that
I think that
we
this
could
is
go talk to our board,
but they can
that
join
doesn't mean that
forces.
all 6,000 Fairlington units are going to be represented at the
Well,
Arlington.
So
that's why
last
we wanna
month
get the Civic
last
Association.
month we spoke to a builder who deals in all of the associations, and so yeah, we know, and I think this is something that is going to affect all of the associations, and that they could all get behind. I can't imagine that they would disagree.
So, because from a homeowner standpoint, you've had to pay money and experience delays to get relief for something that others get for free.
Yeah.
That is
Correct. That is correct. Yes.
And so, that's a very compelling argument.
The other thing I'd like to just point out, if I may, I believe it's in our application, but for us, it's a safety issue.
Sure.
We do not have an egress in the basement except, for the stairs. So for us, the primary reason for this is for safety.
We understand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we see window wells, and we understand that part of it. So somebody make a motion.
Yeah.
Yes, I will. I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving variance V-11822-23-VA1, subject to the conditions listed.
The motion has been made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Mr. Kaplan. I'm not going to ask if there's any further discussion. I'm going to call the roll. Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the application passes 5-0. Thank you guys for humoring us and letting us talk for everything.
We really are asking for your help.
Yes, we have
already
engaged with our board on this twice. We will go back and say we were given a variance. I'm not sure how much longer it will happen, so get in gear.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put
Very
it.
good way of putting it, because we're in a real bind here in terms of.
It helps to know and to be able to tell them, it'll be in a situation where nobody can do renovations in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
But there's also should be a fairly straightforward solution to it.
Agreed.
There is.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
will discuss further at our work session.
Yes, thank you, guys. All right, Mr. Bowen, will you call the next case?
Yes, Ms. Arthurs. The next case is case number V-11823-23-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Highland Street LLC on behalf of Brett and Jamie Eisenberg, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 7.4 feet to the wall instead of 8 feet as required regarding the replacement of walls to an existing one-family dwelling in the R27 zoning district on the premises known as 5004 22nd Street North within the John M. Langston Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request subject to the conditions listed.
Does anybody have any questions for the staff? All right, are the applicants here or applicant here? Oh, hi, guys. Would you guys like to, you guys have been here patiently waiting all night. Would you guys like to speak? Okay. Hi, Alex. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, how are you doing? Yeah, we are just wanting to replace the existing walls on an existing addition that below the I guess around the crawl space, I'm sorry. And the we needed to do repairing the foundation and the piers. So we're going to replace that with a standard foundation so that it can be a usable space.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions for the applicants?
And this is before us because
This is a little bit confusing. These are new walls in a non-conforming location. You may be familiar with a different subsection of the zoning ordinance that allows you to build over non-conforming walls. This is technically construction under non-conforming walls, which is not specifically permitted. So it's a little bit of a unique situation based on the technical wording of the zoning ordinance.
But this is a use permit and not a variance, much like we feel the last one should be.
oh, so there is land disturbance. Is it? Do you go right down to the footers for the
Yes, we're going to replace. There is going to be land disturbance, but in general, we're going to be obviously under the 2,500 square feet. But it's all the work is going to be done from inside of the underneath the crawl space.
So you excavate from the inside?
Right, correct.
And I guess there was one neighbor maybe that we hadn't heard from.
Yeah, I sent, there is a tenant, which I think the homeowners might have some more information, but there's a tenant that is, I'm sorry, I don't remember the address off the top of my head. But I sent a registered mail to the tenant and to the homeowner, and I did not, with returned envelopes, stamped envelopes and a letter to sign, and I didn't get any response. I did get the registered mail receipts that they were received, but I didn't get any response from either the homeowner or the tenant.
And those receipts are in our packet.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my dog is being obnoxious behind me.
It always happens when you're not on mute.
Yep.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Motion? Put your microphone.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the use permit V-11823-23-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Kaplan, seconded by Ms. Clark. I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant your application passes 5-0. Good luck. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, Mr. Bowen, can you call the, dare I say, last case?
That is correct. The last case on the agenda is also a variance in Arlington. That case is case number V-11824-23-VA-1. This is a variance request by Betty and Brian Young, the owners, to permit an addition, a window well, to an existing nonconforming townhouse regarding the addition of a window well in the RA 1426 zoning district on the premises known as 3435 South Wakefield Street within the Fairlington Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance request with conditions.
I suggest that the dialogue from 2 cases ago be attached to this one.
I agree.
I was just going to make the same suggestion.
I agree.
We
I think
just
we talk this through.
And that the applicants join forces with others to make sure that all of the relevant boards combine to put pressure on the county board
Yes,
for some action.
I agree. I agree. Would the applicants like to speak? I think we're probably ready to vote, but we're happy to hear from you guys.
No, we don't have much to say other than thank you for all the work to process the application and also in the discussion before with our neighbor Monica and Michael's case. We just appreciate it.
So you did hear the discussion.
Yes, we heard it. Thank
Did you hear, and that we're tasking you?
I did have a discussion with one of the FCA board members about our specific case and just that I thought it would apply to other residents. So I will definitely share this meeting with them and also just, that how we can help to change the language of the zoning or get the zoning ordinance changed. So it is a recurring problem.
Because last month we had a case where it was an interior renovation and it had to come to us.
I did follow that. That was an attic renovation. Yes, that had the same non-conforming issue because of the space between buildings. Yeah.
And so, you're aware that there's numerous renovations that are taking place in Fairlington in the interior where normally we would not have any jurisdiction at all. And now they're being forced to come to us for even an interior renovation.
Yeah. Motion?
Yes.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving variance V-11824-23-VA1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the application passes 5-0.
I
We're
just,
counting on you guys.
I just want to point out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The staff report says that, this applies only to by right residential projects with multiple buildings, which is a relatively rare form of development in Arlington County. Just from the staff report.
We don't need to say anything. He just needed
Just
to make it.
leave it at that.
Okay, we're concluded, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I would move approval of the minutes of Tuesday, February 7, 2023.
Second.
Motion to pass the February 7th, 2023 BZA minutes motion has been made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. I will call the roll. Ms. Freshman. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Minutes have been passed. That concludes this matter and this hearing.